The protagonist of this story is exceptionally talented with a knife, and there is nothing he can't cut through or nothing that won't yield to his blade. He worked so hard that his palms were covered in calluses, and after spending 20 years in the knife business, he had become the best knife master in the country. Presently, in a restaurant, many people gather for dining, and some also come after hearing the rumor of the chef being skilled with a knife. Meanwhile, inside the kitchen, some workers get distracted by a sound, whereas the main character prepares a fish while listening to music. Then, one of the workers comes up to the protagonist and notifies him that his phone is ringing, but the protagonist wonders what is going on, as his phone should be on vibrate. After looking at his phone, he sees that he got a ton of notifications from a game that he already deleted before and wonders if it is broken. Later, one of the helpers enters the kitchen, informing him that they have customers waiting. However, the protagonist orders him to tell them they don't have it, adding that it's obvious he is not telling the truth. Afterward, a shady-looking guy with his bodyguards enters the kitchen, and addressing the protagonist as Kim, he mentions that he came because he thinks it's time for him to give him an answer. Moreover, he believes he gave him enough time to think it over, and for someone who handles the same things every day, this shouldn't be too difficult. Also, he opens a suitcase full of cash, saying that in situations like this, it's the one asking the favor who should make a gesture first and that he will pay him 3 billion won as an advance payment as long as the job is done properly. However, Kim menacingly slices up a fish into pieces and tells the shady-looking man that this is a kitchen where cleanliness is their top priority and someone as dirty as him has no place here. Therefore, he requests that they leave. Witnessing that, the shady-looking man praises him, saying he is not someone who should be slicing fish in a place like this, so he should come to their side. However, Kim menacingly grabs his knife, at which the shady-looking guys become terrified. Then, the man leaves the kitchen, asking if he honestly thinks he is going to give up that easily and that he will be back soon enough. Moving on, after the mafia guys leave, Kim's coworker tells him that if it were him, he would have said deal right away, but Kim replies he spent his whole life slicing fish, so he doesn't know about dealing with gangsters. His coworker also tells him that he just needs to scare them a little, take the money, and then buy a house or open a shop, to which Kim responds that even if they offered him a fortune, he would still turn it down. Later, the coworker asks about all his notifications and if he is dating someone, but Kim replies it's just a game. Afterward, someone calls them from the restaurant for cleaning duty, so the coworker mentions that the boss is here, so he will leave first. After his coworker leaves, Kim monologues that after his family went bankrupt when he was a kid, all he did was work, and to live like a real human, he has been too focused on just moving forward. Then, he grabs his phone, wondering why it keeps ringing and that this is getting ridiculous. Next, he looks at the notifications, wondering if he reinstalled it when he was drunk, and then he decides to delete it again. However, he accidentally clicks on the notification, and it takes him to the starting screen of the game. The flashy BGM is just as he remembered even after all this time, and the female characters are still as pretty as ever. Suddenly, the game begins glitching, and then a white flash of light engulfs his face. Later, his coworker comes back saying that the boss wants to see him, but Kim wasn't there, and only his phone remained. Then, he wonders where Kim went and why he would leave his phone behind, but on the other side, Kim's phone shows that the transfer is 100% complete. Upon seeing the game, Khan immediately recognizes it as a typical pay-to-win model with a standard auto-hunting system, just like countless mass-produced mobile games with no further explanation needed. He originally played the game because he was captivated by the appearance of the female characters and got drawn into it. Now, he finds it ironic that after spending a fortune and playing through multiple cycles, he's neither a playable character nor an NPC, but he's become a background character whose whereabouts are completely unknown. Kong has possessed this character, and in this new world, his name is Kong Jioma. While walking toward the station, he accidentally bumps into a woman, and they both apologize. He notices that the setting of Miracle Blessing M resembles Korea as the names, locations, and geography are only slightly altered, with a few minor character variations. Thanks to this, he was able to adapt quickly. A whole year passed, and now he's living as a teenager, unsure whether this is real or just part of the game. For him, It's a life he can't fully enjoy, much like his previous one until that fateful day arrived. Returning from school, his parents proudly address him as the great swordmaster Kong, calling him their pride. Then, they flash his acceptance letter, and, embarrassed by it, Kong asks them to put it away, but his parents, beaming with pride, say they've raised him well and can't stop feeling proud every time they look at the letter. As he starts sweating, they remind him that the entrance ceremony is tomorrow and ask if he's packed everything. Pushed by their excitement, he begins packing, realizing that his modest dream of living a normal life has been shattered once again, but with everyone being so happy, he can't refuse. He had tried to avoid the ceremony several times but couldn't, leaving him already exhausted. While packing, Kong stumbles upon a family photo and wonders how the Kong he possessed managed to get accepted into such a prestigious school. He recalls how things unfolded and remembers his parents telling him that last year, he manifested divine powers and took the entrance exam immediately. Then, looking at the admission papers, it dawns on him that his character is a genius. Afterward, he narrates that divine powers are special abilities similar to skills in a game, but not everyone possesses them. These powers typically manifest through genetics, and based on whether one has divine power, society is divided into 3 classes: the privileged, the commoners, and the poor. Hoken Academy, where Kong was admitted, was originally founded to preserve the power of the elite. Though it was established under the guise of a hero's civilization, today, it serves as an exclusive school for upper-class families. Recently, however, a system known as special admission was introduced for non-hero families, and the character Kong possesses was admitted as one of these special students. He also understands that heroes are essential because of the threat posed by the Demon King. Yet, despite all this, he knows this isn't reality, it's just a training ground preparing students for war. Just then, Kong speaks aloud, saying divine power, and a status window appears. Still unfamiliar with it, he sees the divine power he's unlocked and notices a skill called Painlessness, which has a 12-hour cooldown, so he scoffs, calling it nonsense. Then, his attention shifts to the divine power granted to him upon possessing Kong, the blessing of the sword god, and with such power, he assumes no one will dare challenge him. It's a divine ability he's never encountered in the game before, and the name contrasts sharply with its overly simple effect which allows him to slash anything he cuts, but he finds it absurd to label such an obvious trait as a divine power. What feels even more out of place is the activation condition, as his sword must be exactly 30 centimeters in length and less than 5 centimeters in width. He realizes it's the precise size of a sashimi knife, leaving him completely baffled. As the absurdity of it all sinks in, Kong concludes once again that life rarely goes the way he expects. Then, he lets out a sigh and double-checks his packing and realizes he forgot his equipment. Kong knows that even the lowest grade E-rank equipment costs tens of millions, while average C-rank gear costs hundreds of millions, so A and S-rank items must be treasures in themselves. He understands that the tuition alone is exorbitant, and he doesn't want to spend more money on something he's being forced into. However, since the academy requires equipment, he has to bring something or risk making a bad impression on his first day. With that in mind, he decides to head to Daikso to purchase a weapon. His thoughts are interrupted by a memory of his first master, who insisted on using a Japanese sashimi knife worth over 100 million. Suddenly, Kong finds himself thinking about that old man again, recalling his words, "A true master never blames their equipment." The next day, dressed in his uniform and entering the academy, someone questions whether the equipment he's carrying really belongs to him, as during the entrance ceremony and the equipment inspection, he pulled out the sashimi knife as his weapon. Every year, the upper-class students play pranks to assert dominance from the start, and the instructor inspecting him asks if Kong thinks the academy is a joke, seriously questioning his decision to use a kitchen knife for the class placement test. To that, Kong simply replies that it's his weapon, at which the bald instructor becomes speechless. Before he can burst into anger, Kong clarifies that he's a special admission student from a modest family and the tuition alone was already a huge burden on his parents, so he couldn't justify adding the cost of an expensive weapon on top of that. The instructor glances out the color of Kang's name tag and understands that for a student not from an upper-class background, the academy's fees would indeed be overwhelming. He feels it would be wrong for an institution supposedly promoting equal education to push away such a sincere student. Kong adds one more thing: blaming equipment is something only amateurs do. A master never blames their tools. The instructor finds it odd for a teenage boy to say something so profound, yet it feels as though he's already reached some kind of pinnacle in life. The weight of his eloquent words and his unyielding spirit convince the instructor that this boy is the GOAT. He approves Kong Jama's weapon. Grateful, Kong thanks him while the students behind him recognize him as a special admission student. They whisper among themselves, wondering how someone like him ended up in such a prestigious academy. The instructor from earlier quickly tells them to be quiet, warning that after the evaluation, depending on their actions, he can either be their angel or their devil. Hearing this, Kong decides to step outside for a break. He finds a bench and reflects on how, even though he expected this, experiencing it firsthand is still unsettling. Kong has completed the equipment inspection and survived the entrance ceremony. Now, all that's left is the class placement exam. As he sits there, he contemplates his situation, realizing he's truly made it to the school Hoken Academy, also known as the Hero Training School, where he will be studying for the next 3 years. He notes how different the academy looks compared to the graphics in the game. If he had to exaggerate, he'd say the academy is the size of a small town, which is impressive. Attending a school meant for the upper class feels surreal, especially since he had to drop out of high school due to family circumstances in his previous life. Soon, the class placement test is announced, and students are instructed to gather at the training hall by 1 p.m. Kong understands that while the entrance ceremony is over, the class placement test remains incredibly important. Since an exam is still an exam, he knows he must familiarize himself with the process. Looking at his knife, he realizes that ever since coming to this world, he hasn't had a reason to use it. He remembers his master's advice: never put the knife down, even for a single day. Even while you sleep, keep holding it. Kong feels as though he's unconsciously adopting yet another habit from his master. After 20 years of living by the knife, he wonders whether a 1-year break has dulled his skills. He removes the cover from the knife and finds it far better than he expected. Curious, he decides to test it by cutting a leaf. Suddenly, the system alerts him that the weapon has met the activation conditions, and the blessing of the sword god is activated. However, since both his physical body and the weapon are at too low a level, the system initiates suppression to synchronize with the user. Shocked, Kong can't believe that simply drawing the knife triggered the blessing to activate. As the synchronization completes, the system wishes him the blessing of the god. Before he can process this, extreme pain strikes his entire body, and he realizes that if this continues, he's going to die. Suddenly, he finds himself in a new space and, confused, questions where he is. Panicking, he throws the knife away, and instantly, the surroundings return to normal, bringing him back to reality. His body still throbs with pain, and while he understands the activation of divine power, he wonders if the chaos surrounding him is linked to the sword god's blessing. The backlash is unbearable, and although the divine power of painlessness offers some relief from mild soreness, it can't alleviate this kind of agony. Kong realizes that using his skill in this manner is unsustainable if every activation brings such pain. At that moment, the system sends out a reminder for all students to gather at the hall immediately. He knows it's time for the test, and unwilling to leave the divine weapon lying on the ground, he reluctantly decides to pick it up, assuming the pain was only a consequence of the first activation. As soon as his fingers touch the blade, his body is racked with extreme pain once again. Meanwhile, at the training hall, all the students have gathered while parents chat about the exorbitant cost of admission. Suddenly, their attention shifts to Siegfried, the 7-star hero and descendant of Aaron Nibelung, as well as the direct disciple of the founding hero, Balor Waken, known as the strongest human. Siegfried's presence commands the crowd, and because of that, everyone returns to their seats. Just then, the 7-star hero sage, Nydia Poison, greets him and playfully remarks that it's been half a century since they last met. Despite the years, she hasn't begun dressing like an academy director, and turning 70 doesn't seem to have affected her much. She quips that every woman wants to remain beautiful until her last day and offers to use her blessings to make Siegfried look 10 years younger. Siegfried, however, dismisses her offer, pointing out that while she approaches 70, she still hasn't matured, adding that humans should prioritize their inner nature. With a mocking grin, she calls him an old man, amused by the fact that he's just as rigid as he was 50 years ago. Siegfried, clearly irritated, does not hide his annoyance. Mediana, on the other hand, teasingly assumes his granddaughter must be quite beautiful. They both realize the test is about to begin. Inside the training hall, Kong scans the room, noting that he is the only one with black hair. Someone mutters if he is the black-haired foreigner, as the earlier chatter echoes in Kang's mind. Suddenly, a striking girl enters the hall, capturing the attention of every student, including Kong. She is none other than Abel von Nibelung, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor and the main heroine of the game. The subspace was created by the ancestral hero Balor Joaquin, who established this reality alongside the Academy. It is a dimension separate from the real world, where pain and damage are real, but no consequences apply to reality. Since there is no interference from the outside world, even murdering someone is overlooked. Presently, Siegfried and Media discuss the subspace battles, a school tradition, but this year they are trying something new with a battle royale format. Participants will be split into groups of 10, and it will be a survival game with no restrictions on equipment. Siegfried notes that without restrictions, the privileged students will have an unfair advantage. But Media explains that they had to compromise, as the academy is funded mostly by the nobility, and she even fought hard to introduce this new system, which is the special admission. Inside the training hall, students admire the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, while Kong is shocked to see that she is pretty and is no longer just a 2D character, so this feels completely different. He inwardly calls the students fools for trying to approach her but admits he might have done the same if he didn't already know better. Since he has played the game before, he knows that Abel possesses the miracle blessing him, which ties her to the game's protagonist. Beautiful people always seem to have someone by their side, and he realizes that as a special student, he doesn't belong in their league. He resolves to avoid getting involved, hoping to escape a noisy school life. He sets 3 principles for his future: to finish his studies without incident, secure a conventional job, and live a safe life. He recalls that the hero's job comes with a substantial salary, but just the act of drawing a knife left his body trembling, and even now he's still shaking. Let the hero protect the world, he thinks, while he searches for a more comfortable job. The class assignment exam for the 783rd year at Hoken Academy begins, and a mini floating machine explains the rules. This year, as previously announced, it will be a battle royale among 10 randomly assigned cadets. First place will be assigned to the Star class, second and third places to the Dragon class, while 8th to 10th places will be assigned to the Ordinary class. Class assignments will be based entirely on these results with no time limit. He immediately recognizes the setup is just like the game. Knowing his goal is to remain ordinary, he decides not to waste time and aims to finish quickly. Soon after, the subspace generation device activates, and the exam begins, and in the meantime, Kong resolves to avoid drawing his knife unless absolutely necessary. After a while, the evaluations for Group 24 are completed and announced. Moments later, Group 47's evaluation is completed as well. While observing the results, Media mentions to Siegfried that his granddaughter, with the bloodline of Chong Seung and Joel Gung, is sure to achieve significant results, and she notes that a time of 7 minutes and 14 seconds is incredibly fast. Abel, wanting a fair assessment, used a C-rank weapon to achieve the record, placing her among the top 10 in Academy history. Although she couldn't break Siegfried's own record, he acknowledges that this is natural for someone of the Nibelung bloodline and prepares to leave, assuming the event is over. Media informs him that there is still one group left, but he dismisses it as unimportant. Just as he is about to leave, a sudden strange sensation washes over everyone. Media questions whether Siegfried felt it as well, to which he responds that it is unbelievable. As they try to make sense of the situation, something suddenly falls from the sky. To their shock, they witness the sky itself break apart, and 2 students emerge from the subspace. The entire crowd is confused, but then another light shines, and a knife falls from the sky as well. Media quickly calls for medical staff to check the vitals of the cadets who have just appeared. One of the fallen students is Kong, and as he lies there, he accepts the results, as inevitable predetermined from the start. Earlier, the students in the last group began fighting each other, and he realizes with dread that he has been caught in a squad of death. He recognizes the infamous twins of malevolence, Jun and Man, from the Iron King family. While these brothers possess immense talent and innate ability, they are also known for their brutal violence and boundless cruelty. Kang recalls that they deliberately toy with everyone for 30 minutes and is completely ignored by the twins, realizing he is so insignificant to them that he is not even worth their attention. Once the twins finish beating the other students, they ask each other how many remain. Jun states that it's all over, while Shun, surprised, notes that he took care of 4 students. Jun allows Shun to handle the last remaining girl, and Shun eagerly accepts. The girl trembles in fear as she watches them approach. He feels a surge of frustration as he notices that the girl is already panicked and seemingly lacks the will to fight. Shun, seeing her fear, comments that she is just his type. Just as Shun is about to attack the frightened girl, he can no longer remain silent. He screams, questioning why they are going so far when it's just subspace, calling them psychopaths for their cruelty. Without fully realizing it, he steps into the chaos. The twins turn their attention to him. Noticing his special student tag, they call him a lowlife, and Shun decides to deal with him personally. Jun instructs his brother to take down anyone who dares to disrespect them. Panicking, he wonders what he should do. He considers using his blessing of painlessness but knows that avoiding pain for just 30 seconds won't help against opponents who have been brutalizing their classmates for 30 minutes. Spotting a sword, Kang hesitates, aware that if he grabs it, the blessing will activate. He recalls the intense pain he felt earlier when using the blade. He had just set out principles for an ordinary, uneventful life, yet not half a day has passed, and he is already on the verge of breaking them. The twins notice him holding the knife and taunt him, asking if he is mocking them. The terrified girl watches, worried for him, as Shun prepares to finish Kang off painlessly, finding him amusing. He charges at Kang headfirst, ready to smash him. He realizes he can't afford to be picky now, so he decides to use the blessing of painlessness for 30 seconds, hoping it will buy him some time. As he takes a fighting stance, the blessing of the sword god activates. His plan is to endure the pain caused by the blessing while fending off Shun. Shun scoffs, asking what a pathetic knife could possibly do. Kang knows that if he doesn't finish off his enemy quickly, he will be the one to die. He feels the absurdity of holding a sashimi knife intended for cutting fish. He recalls his boss once saying that it's merely a cinematic trope. Such knives would never work against people, even if wielded by a god. Yet he remembers a skill. If he strikes, it will certainly slash the enemy. As Shun closes in, Kang swiftly slashes with the knife, injuring the bully's arm in one decisive strike. The battle concludes in an instant.